What's up and welcome back to another episode of the Still Curtain podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of stillcurtain.com, and joining me as always is Still Curtain contributor Shayne Kubas. Shayne, the Steelers are 3-1 entering the early bye week. We thought this thing was going to be brutal having to bye this early. You have to play 13 straight games plus whatever happens in the playoffs without a break. But suddenly that might be looking like a blessing. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. The big topic for today, Shayne, we're going to break down all three opponents in the AFC North of the Pittsburgh Steelers and just the meltdown, the utter meltdown that's happening in the division right now. Like, I can't believe how grim it looks for those teams. So it's a good day to be a Steelers fan. We're going to start with some news here as well, and then we're going to get to our Steelers-Vikings game notes before we get into those big topics. So stay with us for that. All right, Shayne, let's start right off with Steelers beat the Vikings 24-21. This game was much – it should not have been this close. It should not have been this close. If you watched the game, and I'm thankful to say that because the last two games before that, the Steelers were outmanned. They were beaten up. They were bullied. They looked like the worst team. But this game, the Steelers clearly looked like the better team. Probably should have won this game like 30-9. But it ends up being a field goal game because of some of the conservative play down the stretch.
And not just the conservative play, but I think, again, like this defense, as great as it played in comparison to, especially the first 2 weeks, but even in week 3 where they gave up a lot of just really terrible third down and like long situations, right? Like they were just terrible in those situations. It was a lot better, but they give up the Jordan Addison play that Peyton Wilson luckily chases down, or else that game might have gone very different because they end up having to use several plays to score. Like that could have just been a whole different game if that doesn't happen. And like you said, the conservative play calling and just the decision making, lots to talk about with that.
Yeah, Shayne, you talk about going for it on that fourth down in the fourth quarter there. And I'm like, all right, I like the decision to go for it.
Absolutely.
I don't like running with 198-pound Kenneth Gainwell from 3-4 yards out. You have your choice of anything. It's not like you turn the ball over and downs, the clock stops anyway. Like you've got your choice of all the plays in your playbook there, and that's the one they went with. That wasn't as egregious to me, though, as punting the ball back to the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell's team, with a little less than 2 minutes left in the game. You're 4th and inches. Go out and win the football game. Win the football game. You were running the ball well. They were running for 4.5 yards a clip. Just win it.
There's too much evidence at this point to suggest that that's the way to go, right? Like, I understand the Vikings offense had been pretty bad throughout the day. I understand that you trust your defense. They're playing better. It's just, there's how many times we have to see an offense go down the field and either tie or win a game when the other team chooses not to try to ice the game in that situation. Like, there's a reason why, and I understand like sometimes it doesn't work out, but everyone looks at Dan Campbell and how he handles fourth down situations. And he does it not just because the numbers suggest that, but it's a mentality aspect. Like, he wants his team to have complete and utter confidence in his ability to make those decisions and their ability to execute them. And so he keeps giving them opportunities to do it. And you see, like, you look at the Ravens game where they ice it with the pass to St. Brown. Like, that's just what good teams in the NFL have to be able to do now. And the Steelers not only can't do it, they don't even try to do it really either.
Yeah, and Shayne, that decision, that Mike Tomlin decision to me was so egregious when you didn't put the ball into the hands of your offense to say, get me inches and end the game. You punt the ball back. It ended up being 1 minute and 6 seconds that you punted the ball to Minnesota, and all they needed to do was get in field goal range. Kickers have unlimited range these days. It's like getting a field goal is nothing. Don't do that. Don't give them a chance to, and what happened, Shayne, was they had a 6-play drive, and fortunately there was a penalty on that that backed the Vikings up, because I think the field goal would have been very attainable. That would have sent the game into overtime. And so that was one of my big takeaways from the game afterwards. Like, you finally look like the better team all around on paper, but you just made some questionable decisions there. And this game should have been further apart than what it was. We'll get to our full notes and breakdown here in just a little bit. Let's talk about some of the injuries from the game, Shayne. And I can't help but chuckle a little bit. We don't ever want to see injuries, but just the irony, the irony of the Jalen Ramsey injury where he was, and apparently this is a celebration. I'm not super aware.
I've seen it a few times. I'm like, come on, man. Like,
So I mean, I'm sure you've seen it if you're listening to this podcast, but Ramsey kind of fakes a hamstring injury for that scoop and score touchdown that was obviously called back.
yeah.
Ball was touched out of the bounds, but fakes the hamstring injury, but then ultimately suffers a hamstring, that same leg in the fourth quarter, and it looked almost identical to the one that he faked. And unfortunately, that's going to knock him out of action for a couple of weeks here, it sounds like.
Yeah, and like this was really the kind of injury that this team can't really afford right now because he's been their best secondary player pretty easily, especially in coverage so far this season. And you hope that off the bye that Joey Porter Jr. will be back and they can bring up someone to kind of replace Ramsey for now. But like again, this is a huge injury, right? You're paying this guy a ton of money, you traded for him for a reason, and if he's not out there, the defense is going to probably suffer for it, especially in coverage.
The other injury that occurred during this game, Shayne, was Calvin Austin.
Yeah.
Suffered a shoulder injury, went down late in the contest, did not return. He is expected to miss multiple weeks with the shoulder. Austin hasn't been a huge part of the offense, but he's come up with a couple of really big plays in the first 4 weeks of the season. And now the question becomes, what do you do? How do you replace him? Or is the answer you're just going to play 3 tight ends a lot more because the Steelers love to run their 12 and 13 personnel, but Austin is set to miss some time too.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I know he was taken to the hospital. I'm not sure exactly what the reason for that was outside of just, maybe they're worried about like nerve impingement or something like that in that shoulder or whatever. But looks like he'll be okay, just like you said, missing some time here. And yeah, it's going to be a really interesting question. We'll talk about a little bit as far as what they're going to do over the bye week to get ready for, the next game. How do they want to handle that? Do they want to give more responsibility to one of the other receivers? Do they want to lean into the 12 and 13 personnel even more? Because snap counts there in this game were interesting at tight end. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, too, a little bit. So it's just, there's a lot of question marks this team still has on offense.
And we'll get to some of those in just a little bit. The other news happening this morning as we record this podcast was Sebastian Castro, the promising undrafted free agent, if you will, was on Pittsburgh's practice squad, was poached away by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to their active roster. And so Castro is no more with Pittsburgh. He's going to try to make a living elsewhere. And this is the risk that you run, Shayne. Anytime that you get I wouldn't say a high profile UDFA, but a guy that was at least respectable enough. He had a quality summer. I thought he looked pretty good in the preseason. When you stash a guy in the practice squad and you don't elevate him to that roster, you run the risk of this happening, and it just happened to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I think especially at a position like safety and just the secondary in general, it's really likely that another team will end up with injuries, and they're going to be, snooping around other teams' practice squads in particular. And Castro, especially I believe it was either his sophomore or junior year at Iowa, was like considered one of the better DBs in college football. He does have some pedigree there. Being an Iowa DB, that's usually going to be something that's pretty good moving to the next level. But realistically, didn't seem like he's going to fit into the plans this year. So we'll see if he plays much with the Buccaneers. I mean, they are just devastated injury-wise and really all fronts. It's amazing that team's 3-1 as it is and pushed the Eagles kind of to the brink there. But he might have a chance to play a little bit with all the injuries there.
Yeah, Shayne, and it was telling when Deshaun Elliott went down with the MCL sprain.
Yeah.
Castro still wasn't elevated after that. They went out and signed Jabril Peppers. I don't think there was a shot for him to see playing time on defense unless there were multiple injuries to the safety position.
Yeah.
And at which point they would probably feel more comfortable going out and signing another veteran rather than trusting the UDFA. And so Castro is gone. We wish him luck. We'll see what he ends up doing over there. Shayne, real quick, I wanted to just touch on the Steelers jump in the power rankings this week, heading into their week 5 bye. ESPN's panel of experts has them moving up to 11th spot. They were previously 17th last week. Shayne, is that a fair ranking? And just for a cross-reference here, I saw Pete Prisco came out with his rankings recently. He had them 18th last week, jumping all the way up to 9th this week. So doubling their position.
So that one in particular, I don't know what the sell is there. Moving this team up 6 spots after last week, I think, is kind of asinine to me. they're the same team. They always are, Tommy. We know this, right? Like power rankings are about like talking about what happened the previous week, right? It's not about actually ranking these teams at where they should be at amongst the rest of the league. It's like, well, what happened last week? Let's move guys around. Realistically, not much happened last week that matters. Let's just be it was week 4. When we get to week 12, week 13, teams are more solidified. We know kind of who's in and who's out for the season, stuff like that more. We can start moving stuff around a little bit more. Them beating the Vikings in Dublin, like basically in their homes. I know it's a home game for us because of just the whatever, like, and doing so almost by blowing it just doesn't move me that much. Like, I don't know why you need to move this team up in the power rankings that much right now.
It is. I would say power rankings are largely like a knee-jerk reaction. It's what just happened. What have you done for me lately? And absolutely. I guess the Steelers coming off of a win, it was enough to move them up a little bit. They rank in ESPN's rankings just ahead of the San Francisco 49ers at 12 and the Denver Broncos at 13. September power rankings. This is going to change so much by the end of the season, and hopefully for the better for Pittsburgh. And some of that might be by default, which we'll talk about just looking at the scope of their division. All right, Shayne, let's move on and discuss our notes here from the Steelers versus Vikings. We'll kind of run through this relatively quickly because we've got some big topics today. But let's start over here with the offense and talk about Aaron Rodgers in this game. Wasn't asked to do a whole lot, largely a game manager, only 22 pass attempts, but those went for 200 yards, which was 9.1 yards an attempt. Threw a touchdown in there, was sacked twice, 119.7 passer rating. That's the kind of taking care of the football you like to see. It also, Shayne, Aaron Rodgers set a record for the fastest time of release, I believe, in a game for his own personal record. And so that is, it can be good, but it's not a recipe for success. Like, the offensive line is going to have to protect better. You're going to have to hold on to the ball better. It worked in this contest. The Steelers were efficient. You get DK in space. You get DK on slants and posts. My goodness. That was a lot of the damage right there. Of those 200 yards, didn't grade out particularly well. For what it's worth, Rodgers is the 37th graded quarterback out of 38 qualifying players right now because he's letting his guys do vast majority of their work after the catch, which is great. I mean, you want to see that happen, but I don't know if there was anything to get like super excited about from Rodgers' performance in this one.
That's the thing. And like, people, I'm not even saying that he's anywhere close to the 37th quarterback, because he's not, in my opinion. I think the grading is being a little bit harsh with him. But like, people do need to understand that, like, right now the offense is being run in a way where they're getting the ball out of his hands and not even asking him to make difficult throws for the most part, right? He's had a few this season. It's not like he hasn't had any big time throws or any throws that you go, wow, okay, that he still got the arm. He certainly does. But they don't trust the pass protection, just plain and simple. And they shouldn't at this point. There's no reason to trust the pass protection. So you have to work with what you have. And what you have is a quarterback that's 41 years old who likes the quick game as it is. Let's make that be the biggest part of the offense. And when we do have to try to get something longer developing down the field, you're going to have to use play action. You're going to have to get the run game going to help that be more effective. And to their credit, they did that with the run game this week. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But Rodgers' performance is always going to kind of look like this until either the pass protection clears up a little bit or until they just find a way to get more downfield shots going and quicker passes as well.
Yeah, Shayne, and I went back and watched the all 22, the sky view of Aaron Rodgers, and I kind of just freeze frame things, trying to see where's his reads, what is he looking at. There were some opportunities in there, I think, to go for bigger plays.
Yeah.
Several plays over the middle of the field when he opted for the check down in the flats, where I think that's kind of what we've seen from Rodgers in recent years. It's like, I'm going to take the safe throw over the big gamble throw. A lot of times, maybe what he would have done earlier in his career. The big plays are going to have to increase. Like, the average depth of target is just not good enough to be a serious competitive team. So that's one of the things that we need to see happen in the future. But overall, solid performance from Rodgers. I thought that the Steelers offense played well enough that they should have been able to put up 30 in this game. Had a couple weird things happen there, but not too bad overall. The running game, Shayne, who would have guessed that Kenneth Gainwell is pushing 100 yards here, 99 yards, 5.2 yards an attempt and 2 touchdowns. So no Jaylen Warren in this game. and somehow they had by far their best rushing performance of the season. That's not because Jaylen Warren was absent. Let me make that very clear. It's because the offensive line was creating holes in this game. Another player that we'll talk about here in just a second, but heavy personnel bully the defensive line up front, and it was working. They were pushing guys off the ball, and Gainwell was getting ahead of steam.
Absolutely. And I think specifically, you look at Darnell Washington playing almost 50 snaps in this game. And I think that switch, and you talked about using heavier personnel, he effectively is a sixth offensive lineman. We've talked about this a lot with him. Like that's what he is when he's on the field. He works as essentially that sixth offensive lineman. And, you throw him the ball and he'll just make guys look like they're 5 foot tall. It's hilarious every single time. But realistically, like that's what this is about. The run blocking was not good enough the first 3 weeks of the season. Jaylen Warren was not going to be effective. Neither was Kenneth Gainwell or whoever else they had back there, right? But in this game, they gave Gainwell enough room to actually make good use of his. He's an explosive player when he's in space. Like he can move really well. And even Caleb Johnson, talk about him a little bit. Couple negative plays, a couple of times from like, I don't know, but he had a couple nice runs, right? Like he showed you some of the stuff you want to see. We'll see if his role continues to be limited moving forward, especially when Jalen's back. But I'm hoping he at least got a little bit of a confidence boost by getting out there a little bit. Did drop the pass that was thrown to him. That was rough. He's got to be more effective on passing downs if he's going to play a lot. But again, I think the ground game, you cannot be anything more than satisfied with it.
Yeah, and Eddie Faulkner said that Johnson had kind of knocked the rust off there, got a boost of confidence, that he insists that confidence is not going to be an issue for Caleb Johnson moving forward. It was nice to see him get a little bit involved there, though, and get on the positive side of the yardage there after finally getting more than 2 carries in his first 3 weeks of the season. Got 6 in this game for 22. We'll take it. We'll take it, and hopefully that's a step in the right direction. We'll get to the tight ends just a second. The receivers, I mean, this was the DK Metcalf show through and through. 5 targets, took those for 126 yards and a touchdown, including an 80-yard catch and run that only, I think, a handful of receivers in the league could do. And one of one can do when you are 6'4" and 230 pounds. Like, he has got unreal juice after the catch, and the Steelers have to start using him that way, because if you look at his 2 best games this season by far, Shayne, it was week 1 and week 4. In the middle 2, week 2 and week 3, he was really quiet because he wasn't used on slants and posts. And so get the guy slants, get him posts, allow him to make runs after the catch ability, which we've seen. He can chew up splash plays in that aspect of his game. That's what he needs to do. And I think we were seeing that formula of success in week 4.
Yeah, and again, that's his bread and butter. Like, you go back to his days at even at Ole Miss and with the Seahawks, like, he is very much like he's a limited player in a lot of ways, but he's so overwhelming physically that you can get away with it, right? As long as you're using him properly. Like, he isn't a true like jump ball guy or one of those guys that's going to sky over guys and take the ball away. He's had a couple plays like that this year. I'll give him credit for it. He was really rough in that area the past couple of years, but that's just not really his game in general. Like, it's not something I think you want to go to consistently, but he can cross the face of the DB better than anyone on the slants. He can run those posts because he just glides away from guys. Like, that's just what it is with him. If you can't use him that way effectively and consistently, he's just not always going to be productive, right? And that's part of the problem with Seattle too, is that he was productive there overall, but he had his big games and he has his quiet games. But they don't have anyone else right now that they can go to when he's having a quiet game. So until that's the case, you have to spend a lot of your time getting him into spots to be able to run those types of routes and win on those routes.
Yeah, and what's remarkable, Shayne, is you look at DK in this game at 126 yards. The next receiver on the team, Calvin Austin, with 13 yards on 2 targets. No other wide receiver, had a yard or a catch in this game. And so it's kind of the story of the 2025 season so far, is that tight ends are running backs, and running backs are just simply being used more than the receivers. I think that could limit them. I really do. I think it could limit the explosiveness of their upside. Just history tells us that tight ends aren't as explosive as wide receivers, certainly not running backs when you're pitching the ball to them in the flats or out of the backfield. You want to get more big plays, not less. And so I think that's a split that we need to see change after the bye week here, and we'll talk about that later. Let's move on to the tight ends, though, Shayne, for now. And you've already brought up Darnell Washington. I have to go over these splits here for a second. Or let me start with the snap count from week 4 against the Vikings. Darnell Washington in this one had 48 snaps. One of the highest, I think it was the second highest mark of his NFL career. After that, tight end eligible Spencer Anderson had 19 snaps. So technically operating as a wide tight end there. Connor Hayward had 16, Freiermuth had 15, and Jonnu Smith had 13. And so the combination of Jonnu and Freiermuth combined for a fraction as many snaps as what Darnell had. And maybe that's the recipe for success. Darnell was really good. I mean, he was breaking tackles after the catch. I don't even think he was credited with an actual broken tackle when I looked at it, but he was dragging defenders for an extra.
Yeah, so the problem is he never broke them. They just didn't tackle him really.
They piled on. They piled on 2 or 3 at a time. So
he didn't so much break them as they just didn't tackle him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But I got these numbers here, Shayne. I want to know what you think. It's a relatively small sample, but since he was drafted in 2023, the Steelers have had 6 games in which Darnell Washington has played over 40 offensive snaps. In those games, the Steelers are 6-0. They rush for over 125 yards a game. They have 7 rushing touchdowns in that mix. They've outscored their opponents 149 to 110, and they're 2-0 against the Baltimore Ravens when Darnell plays over 40 snaps. Small sample, but a really encouraging sample. And I do think that for more context here, I think this is largely determined by the game script. Like we think we're going to beat up on your weaker defensive front, whatever. We're going to go heavy personnel, or we're leading in the game. And so Darnell's going to be playing more. But you can see in this game, like the running lanes were just way more open than they've been all season long. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's because Darnell Washington was blocking 3/4 of the time out there.
Yeah. And I think specifically with Darnell at this point, he should probably be technically this team's #1 tight end in terms of snaps. And that's what he was in this game. And I think the key, though, is you can't really afford to have Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith get 28 total snaps together. I just don't think you can continue to do that as well as play Darnell 50 snaps because the passing game will suffer for it. But that's the key to this offense to me, is if you're going to make this an offense that's viable in the playoffs, all 3 of those guys have to play and have to have a role that is at least semi-defined and can be gone to whenever they need to. Because DK is going to be this team's #1 target, obviously. After him, Calvin's banged up right now. We'll see what he looks like when he gets back. You have not gotten anything or really given Roman Wilson a chance to do anything. You have to figure out a way to make these tight ends be the focal point of the offense. And again, Darnold's not going to be a volume receiver, so you don't have to worry about getting him like 6, 7, 8 targets a game. But the other guys need to be targeted in this offense. Pat didn't have a catch on Sunday. I think Jonnu had 2 for like 6 yards or something like that. I have to double check that. Like, that's just not good enough for tight ends that are getting paid a combined like $20 million or whatever it is for those 2. Like, you have to find a way to make them more effective. But Darnell needs to play, though, at the same time. Like, it's very clear that the run game needs him to be on the field.
Yeah, and Jonnu and Freiermuth have combined to largely be pretty ineffective in the passing game over the first 4 weeks of the season, which is not what you want to see when they have a combined salary of over $24 million for the 2025 season, almost as many snaps played as their salary in the millions. And so you need to see them. You need to see them improve. But I agree with you 100%. Darnell Washington should be this team's #1 tight end in terms of snap usage. I don't know if he should ever leave the field because he can either operate as a 3rd offensive tackle or he can be a nightmare matchup that can do some damage after the catch. And so we'll see if that trend continues or if it flips back the other way. But something to note there for sure. The offensive line, Shayne, they just don't protect very long. And we haven't seen a lot of samples of Roger trying to hold the ball. But on the very first play of the game, miscue. Somebody doesn't pick up the stunt. And I mean, this is really becoming the story here for this group, is there so many miscommunication problems. And then again, I have to point the finger back at Pat Meyer. Why are these happening? I mean, you're Broderick Jones in year 3 and Zach Frazier somehow seems like he's gotten worse. I mean, he'd be still really good, just a super promising season last year. Like, how is this unit not like improving by leaps and bounds? And I think you got to point the finger at the O-line coach and say, why are all these miscues still happening?
Exactly. And I think that's the problem. Is it's one thing for these guys to be playing relatively poorly, which when it comes to Broderick, he definitely is. McCormick's been up and down, but I think he, especially in this game, was very, very good. I think the guards in this game were really good, especially Simalu and McCormick. Frazier still fine, but again, he's regressed a little bit too. Like, it's one thing to say, okay, maybe the talent level isn't as high as we hoped it was, right? That's one thing. If you can't communicate and you can't work together as a unit, it does not matter how good you are. Like, you could take the Eagles' offensive line with all the talent they have on that. If they didn't know what was coming and they didn't know how to block it up, it wouldn't matter. Just you can't block people that you don't know where they're coming from or how to pass them off. And until that gets better, until the operational aspect of things get better on the offensive line, you won't get to see if this talent is good enough. Like, it just won't matter how talented they are or not. So realistically, again, Meyer's probably going to be gone after the season. His contract will be up. Hopefully whoever comes in will be able to do more with these guys and make them work. But I don't know how much better it gets if the problem is ultimately more so to do with that than it is the talent necessarily.
Yeah, it's rough. And I think we'll talk about that at the end of the show here today. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball, Shayne. And I've got to give Keanu Benton a shout out, a much deserved shout out. This guy, credit to him, has been playing out of position for 3 years now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Finally, though, has a very big performance against the Minnesota Vikings. And so nice to see him get on the sack sheet here. Like, in his first 37 games, Shayne, Benton combined for 2 sacks. He had a sack and a half in this game. He was making plays constantly behind the line of scrimmage, 3 quarterback hits, 5 tackles, a handful of pressures. By far the best game of his career, at least in terms of him being a pass rusher. I think it's an encouraging sign of things to come, and maybe just that added bulk on the defensive line. Maybe it's getting Derek Harmon back into the lineup there and maybe having some of the pressure alleviated from him a little bit. But Benton just had a really good game.
Yeah, and I think specifically you look at the snap counts for him. He did still lead this team in A-gap alignment, but it was 6 snaps.
Yeah.
That's more what he needs to play in terms of that many A-gap snaps. He was second behind Cam in terms of lining up this true like B-gap, like 3-tech type of alignment. Good. Like, I don't know what else to say other than good. Like, you see what he's capable of when he's allowed to be let loose as a pass rusher. Like, and again, this is not news to anyone who watches him play or has seen him play in the past. It's somehow seems to be news to the Steelers occasionally when they do that, and then he's good, and they're like, oh, all right. And like, knowing them, next time we see him out there, he'll play 20 snaps at nose tackle. I don't know. But right now, at least, it seems like they understand what he's about. And I do think Harmon coming back is a big part of that, because now they do have the ability to kind of move guys all over the place and play them all different alignments. And I think Harmon looked pretty good as well. Like, that whole group in the interior was pretty good. And I do think we should talk to the edge rushers next, because they just were dominant in this game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Nick Herbig, I was going there right after that. He's making a case, man. He is making a case that when Highsmith comes back from that high ankle sprain, what's the splits going to be looking like? How many snaps is Herbig going to get? Because this is a guy that every time it's a passing down, he really shouldn't be off the field. He's that good as a pass rusher, kind of picking up where he left off from last season. And so he's a guy that you just want out there. Dusted Christian Darrisaw, multiple reps, had the sack in this game. Just a really productive overall player that you want to see get more involved.
Yeah, and again, with Herbig, I think it's tough, because I've seen a lot of talk about what to do with Highsmith and all this and that. People, I think, forget Highsmith in week 1 had 8 pressures and a sack. Like, might have lost Tom here. But he had 8 pressures and a sack in week 1 against the Jets. It's not like he wasn't playing well enough to keep the starting role. But I do think figuring out a way to get all 3 of these guys on the field, and I think one of the coaches talked about maybe trying to do that when they're back, when they're all back. And that's what you need to do. Like, honestly, what I would do with this group is Herbig does need to play a lot on passing downs in general. Specifically, though, they need to allow him to kind of be a roamer almost, kind of like they do with like some other defenses do, where they have guys line up in the A gap or they have rush to the middle, like that type of stuff. That's what I want to see Herbig do whenever Highsmith is on the field, because I think Highsmith is more of a traditional true edge rusher type, whereas Herbig was kind of more of that tweener body size type at least. Have him roam around, kind of do some fun stuff in the middle of the defense occasionally, and then let Highsmith be like the edge setter. That's how I think you can use all three of them. But I do agree Herbig needs to still remain a big part of the especially the third down pass rushing unit, if nothing else.
Yeah, I don't mind rotating to keep guys fresh, but he's just so good as a pass rusher. Shayne,
Yeah.
maybe at this stage, you could make a case. Is he the best pure just pass rusher on the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of getting quick pressure on the quarterback, finding ways to win? I mean, inside moves, outside moves. He can ghost you. He can dip around the edge. He can rush from the middle. He can stunt. I think he's the best of the group at stunts. Like, find a way to get him involved. Line him up over center. Like, just some of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
He's the scariest one because, again, like, TJ is technically perfect, like, does all the right things, still can get after the passers. We've seen that last 2 weeks. So I'm glad to see it because we just really didn't see it much first two games. So I'm glad to see that. But he's not quite the same athlete he was. Highsmith is a very technical pass rusher as well. Can win with speed, but definitely more of a guy that, we've seen a spin move work, stuff like that. Herbig is just going to beat you to the corner most of the time if you're an offensive tackle that doesn't move their feet well. And that scares offenses. It just does, because that's how you get the strip sacks. It's how you get the quick pressures that lead to forced throws that lead to intercept. Like, that all matters a ton for this defense right now, especially with missing guys in secondary. You cannot allow offenses to have the ball for 4 seconds and dissect the coverage. So he's the scariest one of the three for sure, just because of the speed element. And again, you can't afford to take that off the field right now, especially when they haven't been good on third and longs. Like, the teams can't get to hold the ball for 4 seconds on 3rd and 10.
All right, Shayne, let's move on to the linebackers. And I got to talk about the highlight play real quick here before we get to the bad. But Peyton Wilson, what he did on that to save the touchdown, and legitimately, that may have saved the game. If the Steelers had made the same decisions after that, and Tomlin still got conservative, and then he gives the ball back, and the Vikings have an additional minute, they don't have to be so rushed to go down and get that field goal eventually to go and tie the game, send it to overtime. But getting that touchdown saving tackle, chewed up over a minute of clock on the game there late in the fourth quarter. What he did there, though, it was according to Next Gen Stats, it was the fastest recorded time ever by a linebacker in the Next Gen Stat era that dates back to 2016, I believe. 22.48 miles per hour. And if you don't have a good sense of what that is for a human being to run, I'll give you an example. DK Metcalf on his 80-yard touchdown reception, when he flew past every defensive back, ran 21.17 miles an hour. Peyton, you're talking about 1.5 miles faster per hour than what DK was on that play. He can fly. There's a reason he ran a 4.43 official time at the 2024 NFL Combine, and he was faster than that even on film. And so it's nice to see that speed, even with the lack of an ACL in one knee. Like, it doesn't seem to matter for him.
No, and again, like, he had probably his best game of the year as well overall. It still wasn't perfect, but he was much better in this game. That play, like you said, if he doesn't tackle him at the 1 yard line, I don't know if the Steelers win this football game. That's really depressing to think about, considering it was a blown coverage that allowed it to happen. But that is true. Like, if he doesn't make that play, if he isn't the fastest linebacker maybe we've ever seen, like you said, like, at least in terms of like straight line speed, we probably lose the game, or at least it gets a lot closer than it needed to be. So shout out to him for making that play. Linebacker play overall, again, he played his best game of the season, I think, so far. The tackling was phenomenal by this team at all levels, but linebacker level as well. Again, I'm going to keep saying it until it's not true. Patrick Queen just does not move me still, unfortunately, overall. Holcomb didn't play as many snaps this week, but I think he played well when he was out there. The linebacker unit is starting to look more playable, I would say, but I'm going to hold my breath until I see more of them.
I went back and I watched every Peyton Wilson snap from the All-22, and I was actually really encouraged by what I saw, because he was so aggressive. He didn't miss tackles. He took good angles to the football. I mean, he was all over the field. It kind of reminded you like of one of those old Ryan Shazier games where he's just involved. The issue is, and if you're wondering, if you're saying, well, how come he's not grading out well in PFF? Tons of communication issues, and it's not just Wilson. It's Wilson and Queen. The combination of the two, they can't seem to get their assignment figured out for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you notice that too, like when they had him backed up, the 4th down play, they had a chance to stop the Vikings there at the goal line. Peyton Wilson thought that he had called Queen to do one thing, and Queen thought that he was supposed to do something else. And so we don't know the full extent of the details there, but you can see the miscues in coverage. And that's primarily where the issues are occurring for these linebackers, is in coverage. If they can get those figured out, then you've got 2 athletic, really aggressive linebackers. They could be one of the better pairings in this league. Now again, their grades, their PFF grades do not reflect that. I think that both of them have still outplayed their just very modest PFF grades to this point. But we saw, and again, and I go back to Peyton Wilson again, we saw a tremendous season at NC State and then a tremendous rookie season. I'm not willing to wipe away those 2 years of film to say that he suddenly regressed as a player and just doesn't have it anymore. He's clearly a phenomenal athlete. They just have to figure out the communication issues, kind of the same as the offensive line. Figure out those communication issues. Things are going to go a lot more smoothly for you. Yeah.
Linebacker coverage is so much about like trying to be at the right place, the right time, be at the right spot, making sure you're covering your area, not just, trying to figure out what the quarterback is trying to do, because that's how you can get baited and thrown over your head. Like it's really hard to play linebacker in the NFL. Just bar on like one of the hardest positions to play, and that's part of why it's been devalued a little bit, because teams just are not willing to spend a lot of money on guys that they might not really be able to play that well, even if as they get older. It's why the guys who show they can play get paid pretty well when they do get paid. So, but I do think these guys will figure it out eventually.
All right, Shayne, secondary real quick. Deshaun Elliott looked real strong in his game back from the MCL sprain. Surprised we didn't see more Peppers maybe still mixed in, but he's coming off a good performance. Elliott was strong. James Pierre, like, what is this guy? He's so wild because you don't want him to like play a full game, but if he has to come in a pinch, he tends to make things happen. Like he had the pass deflection there in the end zone, had that what should have been a pick if he didn't double catch the ball late in the game. That would have ended the game effectively right there. Ended up only going a few plays longer than that. But I thought he played really well too. Obviously, they still have some injuries in the secondary. Eccles was banged up in this one. Slay, I think, was banged up at one point. Ramsey suffered the hamstring injury. And so, like, Pierre was like your only, like, fully healthy cornerback in week 4. Now, hopefully you can get Joey Porter back here soon. Corey Trice is eligible to come off of IR after the bye. We'll see how those guys are progressing. But overall, I think the secondary had some lapses in this game. It's hard to call it a great game because, I mean, still, we're talking about giving up 350 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the Steelers were able to get a pair of picks in this game. It did come on 46 pass attempts, which is an awful lot. And they got to Carson Wentz 6 times for sacks, only 7.6 yards an attempt, which is a respectable number. But I thought the secondary did well overall compared to their first 3 games.
Yeah, and again, comparably too. Like that's the key thing here is the secondary was so bad the first 3 games of the year.
Awful. That
any sort of improvement is nice to see, even against a passing offense that, as talented as the receivers are, this is still 32-year-old Carson Wentz. Like, you don't want to get burned by him. And again, the numbers don't look awesome on the surface, but there was the one blown coverage to Addison we've talked a bunch about already. You take that out, he's under 300 yards for the game, most likely. Obviously it might have had another drive to try to score, but still, and they were coming from behind, so you had to throw the ball a lot. Like the raw yardage total, not ideal, but when you factor in the inefficiency of it in a lot of ways and the 2 turnovers, I think it's totally fine. So.
All right, Shayne, special teams here. Chris Boswell had a blocked field goal,
which might as well just assume that's going to happen every week now, because it seems like it's going to. So, not for the Steelers specifically, just across the league. So.
That was kind of wild. And I think that was one of like 4 misses over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones have come like weather conditions,
62 or whatever,
62, 58 yards. Like, not worried about that whatsoever. Obviously, Caleb Johnson's not returning kicks anymore.
As we would hope not.
Yeah, and so not a whole lot of notes. Anything else special teams wise? We'll get on to our next topic.
Yeah,
here.
Not really. I did want to pull this comment up because we're about to talk about some stuff with what the Steelers might be able to do. From Corey here, are we ever going to improve the wide receiver room, especially now? We can part ways with Muth if need be. He hasn't been a needle mover at all. That's a fair point, unfortunately, with Freiermuth. I think a lot of that has more to do with the offensive design, but either way, we're definitely going to talk about that a little bit. But for me, I don't know if it matters. I just don't know. I don't know who you're going to add unless it's a pretty serious trade target, which there just might not be many of. That's going to really change how this offense operates. So,
man, if you could package either of those tight ends, Johnny or Freiermuth, and I can get a better receiver for it, I'm all for that. Arthur Smith, I'm sure, would not be.
No, you're like, well, I need my 4 tight ends.
Tight ends. I mean, that's we've seen
it's like,
this
then
for
use them.
5-6 years. Yeah.
So
whatever. Yeah. No, thanks for the question. Corey Beavers, my high school alma mater. I went to Corey High School, and our mascot was the Beavers. So I think I've said that once before on this show. So keep those questions coming. Absolutely. If you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain Podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain Podcast on YouTube. We appreciate all of your support. Now, this is a topic that I'm excited to talk about, Shayne.
Yes.
The AFC North and the meltdown, the utter meltdown that's happening in this division. Now, I will be the first to say, and I'll get many fans that disagree with me on this. I want the Steelers to win the hard way. I really do. I want them to win when the Ravens and the Bengals are at full strength. And you'll say, well, I'll take wins any way I can get them. The reason I'm saying that is because this team hasn't been lacking regular season success. They've been lacking postseason success. And so I'm afraid that if they beat up on teams that they should beat up on, they're going to get caught off guard again when it matters most. They'll get bounced from the playoffs. That's why I preface with that. I want them to play teams at full strength, and I want them to perform well against teams at full strength so they can prove they are an actual good football team. But having said that, I will take some wins. And this team, when you get into the postseason, assuming your quarterback's not Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph, you might actually have a chance to do something, especially with the scope of the AFC in general and how there are very few contenders right now outside of the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs and maybe the Chargers. Like, maybe you could make a splash, and maybe this is the year to have an easy path to the postseason because there's just not a lot going on for this conference, Shayne.
Yes, and specifically this team desperately, if they want to win any playoff game, let alone 2 or more, they need desperately a home game. They need to have teams come to Pittsburgh in January, especially because it seems like they're not going to be facing a fellow AFC North team, most likely, the way things are going. We'll see about some of these teams later in the season, but they need to have, like, imagine if the Chargers had to, let's say they don't end up winning the division or something, they had to come to Acrisure in January. Like, that sucks for them. That's not great.
Yeah.
Like, as good as they are, as good as they can be, like, that just sucks if you're the Chargers, right? Or let's say the Colts end up making this thing happen, and they're, well, probably one of them or the Jags has to come to Acrisure. Like, that sucks. That's going to be a rough game. They need this division. They just really do. And if they can't win it with the conditions they're currently in with the other teams, we're going to talk about each of these teams, they just simply don't deserve to, right? There's just no way.
Yeah. And let's go right down through all 3 opponents in the AFC North. We're going to talk about where they sit right now and what issues they have going on, because they've all got some major issues. Let's start here with the Cleveland Browns, sitting at 1-3. They are coming off of a 34-10 blowout loss to the Detroit Lions. In this game, Joe Flacco was 16 of 34 for 184 yards, 5.4 yards an attempt with a 39 passer rating and a 12 QBR. It doesn't get a lot worse than that. Somehow, Shayne, and this kind of tells you the state of the Browns offense, somehow Flacco graded out as the top 5 player on the Browns offense this week because the offensive line is terrible. Dawan Jones is the worst tackle in the NFL. It's why they have to play him as part of a rotation. He can't run block. Turns out when you're almost 400 pounds, you can't move that well as an offensive tackle. They just have so many issues. Jerry Jeudy is like their only respectable option in the wide receiver room, and you just can't get by with the garbage that you have right there. And now on top of all that, Shayne, this 1-3 Browns team that ranks dead last in the NFL, second to last in the NFL in points per game, I believe. They are making a quarterback switch. And it's ironic because just last week, Mike Tomlin said he talked about the game against Shane Steichen and the Colts last year and said how we don't want Joe Flacco on the field. Keep Anthony Richardson upright.
I'm sorry, by the way, it's such a funny thing to
it's
say.
ridiculous. It's a ridiculous statement. If you can't, if you're scared of a 40-year-old Joe Flacco coming off the bench,
it's the whole thing.
I don't agree with what he said, but the irony of it is the Browns had a chance to play Joe Flacco, a player that Tomlin was adamant that he doesn't want to face. And what do? They turn to third-round pick Dillon Gabriel in his first ever NFL action is going to be in his first full game is going to be this week overseas. And then it's going to be second game is going to be against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers have 2 weeks to prepare for a 5'11", 200-pound rookie quarterback that, quite frankly, I just don't think has any traits to work with. Like the arm talent is pedestrian. He's got some mobility to his game. We'll see. Maybe he'll surprise us. But they're making this switch right now. And it's like the outlook of this team is so grim. So if we look at what's happened so far with the Browns this season, they lost a close game to the Bengals in week 1 where a lot of fluky things happened. In week 2, they were massacred by the Ravens 41-17. Somehow the Browns just do the wildest things. And in week 3, they beat the Green Bay Packers 13-10. And then they got turned around. They lost by 24 this week to the Lions. This is a very unserious football team with potentially the worst offense in the league. And it might get worse after making the QB switch.
This is the problem with the Browns this year. And it's a big reason why when Myles Garrett signed his extension here, I just kind of had to roll my eyes at it. Is this defense has been outside of the Ravens game, and even the Ravens game wasn't actually that bad. They just kind of were getting shoved out there too much with how bad the offense is. This defense is truly like elite tier right now. Like they truly are. And it's the reason they were able to beat the Packers because they just kept keeping them in it, and the offense finally obliged enough to win the game. Like that's literally what happened. But they can't score points. And if you can't score points in the NFL, it doesn't matter how good your defense is. You cannot keep everyone to 10 points. You just can't in the NFL. It's not possible. So they're not going to win games as currently constructed, at least not often. Against other bad teams, they have a better chance of winning than a lot of other teams because the defense is so good that they at least have that trump card. Right now, unless Dillon Gabriel can start scoring 20-ish points a game for this team, they're just going to have a hard time winning against anyone, right?
Yeah.
And I don't expect that because, again, Gabriel was fun to talk about when he was like a day 3, like, oh, let's bring him in as back. Third-round pick is just rich for me, for any quarterback of this type. And you're shoving him out there when, let's be honest, what is he going to do? What can he do other than turn around and hand the ball off to Quinshon Judkins, which is the only part of their offense that works right now? Like, what else can you do besides that? You can't pass protect. You can't throw the ball to anyone because the only guy you can throw to isn't that great either. It's just Jerry Jeudy. Harold Fannin, 20 targets a game. What are you going to do here? I don't really understand what the process is here. So,
yeah, Shane, even the running game is having trouble getting off the ground. In week 4, they had 27 carries for 79 yards. That's 2.9 yards an attempt with an 11-yard run as they're long on the afternoon. Just not good. I mean, their defense is going to keep them in some games this year. Their defense is going to win them some games this year, but it's going to be few and far between. The Browns are averaging 14 points per game, 30, which ranks 31st in the NFL. And I think for most teams, 17 points wins it. I mean, that's going to win the game for you. If you get to 17 on, albeit a very respectable defense, the game is yours unless you somehow have a monumental collapse. But I don't think things are going to get better for the Browns offensively. I still think I think that based on the talent they have, the struggles on the offensive line, the lack of wide receiver talent, the fact that you don't know what you want to do at quarterback, and they kind of haven't really known all along, I think that they're going to finish as the 30th ranked or worst offense in the league this year. I don't see it getting a lot better. Needless to say, they are not going to be a playoff contender this year. Now, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean the Steelers should take them lightly. We've seen them lose to the Cleveland Browns just last year. So you still got to show up. You still got to be prepared. Like I said, you got 2 weeks to prepare to face Dillon Gabriel in his second ever NFL game. So if you can't win that game at home, when the Browns are going to be jet lagged coming back across the pond, and there's so many advantages going their direction right now, you should be able to sink this team pretty early in the season. So got that unthreatening opponent out of the way. Again, don't take them lightly, but the Browns aren't very good. Let's talk about a team that has a better record than the Browns, but it's even worse football team. For sure, a worse football team is the Cincinnati Bengals. They are 2-2. So they found a way, Shayne, to win 2 games this season. And just to rehash here, they beat the Browns by 1 point in the season opener. They beat the Jaguars by 4 points in week 2. Since then, they have been outscored 76-13 over the last 2 weeks. No Joe Burrow, no success for Cincinnati, and that's not going to change. We know the Bengals. We know that they are the most stud and dud team in the league. You've got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. Maybe Shamar Stewart can be something for you. Maybe a little bit of Dax Hill. That roster is horrendously bad outside of those guys. And if you don't have a quarterback, you've got nothing going for you. The defense is atrocious. The offense is just as bad. By the way, it ranks 30th in the NFL right now, just ahead of the Bengals. Is probably about to drop below them here pretty soon. This team doesn't have a shot. It really, really doesn't. I feel bad. I really feel bad for Bengals fans. Joe Burrow was shut down at least 3 months. I think it's going to end up being the whole season because he's not going to have anything to play for once he comes back. Just shut him down. But is it the worst team in the NFL without Joe Burrow, Shayne?
Yes. Because here's the thing. The offense simply doesn't work without him right now. And I think that's a shame. And it's also really telling about who Zach Taylor is as a coach. He has basically tied his entire existence to Joe Burrow's right arm. And when he's not out there, it clearly just doesn't work. He doesn't have answers on offense. Jake Browning doesn't have answers on offense. And the thing that I will say as well, and because I know a lot of Bengals fans are probably wondering, how is it this bad with Jake Browning when he did show some promise the other year he had to play a lot, a couple years ago. The worst offensive performance in terms of yards this team has had this year was with Joe Burrow at quarterback in week 1. This was just already a bad football team, in my opinion. They're a talented football team in some aspects, specifically the offensive firepower, but it was a bad football team in week 1. And it's a worse football team now that Joe Burrow doesn't play. And you look at the last 2 weeks, they simply can't do anything right. Not one thing right. They can't run the football. They can't throw the football. They can't defend the pass. They can't defend the run. They can do nothing well. And when you're that level of bad at every aspect of playing the game, I legitimately think that it's possible that they win maybe one more game this year if Burrow doesn't play at all. Even if he comes back late in the season, which I don't know why you would if you're that bad anyway. I don't know if they have 2 more games in them, if this is what they're going to look like. Now, could it get a little bit better over time? Sure. But I don't believe in the coaching. That's the biggest thing is this is a guy who's made it to a Super Bowl as a head coach. And it's clearly not because of how good he is. It's very clear at this point. If he can't get a few wins out of this group, even with Burrow out, I understand losing your starting quarterback when he's one of the 5 best in the league is really difficult. But this is your hand-picked backup. This is the guy that you wanted to be the backup for the situation. You can't win a game, potentially, and you can't cross the 200-yard mark half the time. They have 821 yards of offense this year. It's been 4 – there's offenses that did that the last 2 weeks. It's just so bad. It's almost unbelievable how bad it is.
Yeah, Shayne, and their next 3 games are against the Lions, at Green Bay, and then at Pittsburgh. No, versus Pittsburgh. They'll be home for that game.
They might not score 30 points over those 3 games.
No, it's really bad. It truly is. I think that without Joe Burrow, I think this team is down there with the Saints, down there with the Panthers. They're rock bottom.
Somewhere in that group, yeah.
So we'll see, and let's hope that if he does have Jake Browning does have a few wins in him this season, let's hope that one of them does not come against the Pittsburgh
It would be
Steelers.
Against us, unfortunately, but
because they went into a shootout. Didn't it go into a shootout before the Jake Browning game?
I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, let's hope that's not the case. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. So of these 3 opponents here, this is the only true contender. Without Joe Burrow, it's not going to be the Bengals. The Browns are not going to have an offense this year, barring something miraculous. The true contender here for the division title are the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Well, what do we know about these two teams right now? The Steelers are healthier. They do got some defensive players banged up. Nothing season ending, but should be getting these guys back here in a couple of weeks. They have a better record. They're 3-1. The Ravens are 1-3. They're already find themselves 4 weeks into the season. They find themselves at a 2-game deficit behind the lead. And Shayne, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse this week. Cooper Rush is going to be the quarterback. And you've got a daunting task. Lamar Jackson's dealing with a hamstring. It's possible he could miss a couple of games. They may just, out of sake of trying to save their season, they may have to rush him back to the field after this week if the Ravens lose. Because if you look up the record of teams that have a 1-3 start to begin the season, and your chances of making the playoffs after 1-3 is between 11 and 14%. It's already a very small number. You start 1-4, that goes down to almost nothing. And then 1-5, you're essentially eliminated. Well, the problem is the Ravens aren't going to have Lamar Jackson this week. They're going to be starting Cooper Rush, and he's going to be going against a Houston Texans team that's coming off a 26-0 blowout win with a really good defense. I just don't know where this team is going to go. I think there's still room to go down pretty significantly from here. And then they play the LA Rams after that. We could very well be looking at a Ravens team, Shayne, that starts the season 1-5, and you are effectively eliminated. You have to play perfect football the rest of the season to have a chance.
Yeah, I think if Lamar misses these 2 games, they lose both of them and the season is effectively over. And it's honestly like this. I know we're Steelers fans. We're talking about this. It's a shame for a team this talented that is as good as this team could be, for them, one, to be so banged up that it's basically kind of puts them out of contention immediately. But also, this is the league's worst defense by a lot of metrics through 4 games. And they've played good football teams, like especially the Lions and obviously the Bills. And the Chiefs obviously getting Worthy back. These are good offenses outside of the Browns, which the Browns are bad, so they didn't do anything against them. So they're facing really good offenses, but they have no answers. Nothing. The offenses could do whatever they wanted to them for the most part through 4 games. And that was with a lot of the talent still on the group. So you're missing so many guys. Madubuike is out, Queen's banged up. If this is what this team is going to look like on defense for even a couple more games, like you said, they're going to have to play perfect football down the stretch. And this team doesn't play perfect football most of the time. They have a couple stinkers even when everybody's healthy. That's just what they do. Can they avoid that entirely for 10, 11 straight games if they need to? I just don't see it. The ceiling for wins might be 9 with this team. And that's if they really hit a nice head start out of the bye week and Lamar's healthy, they might be able to get to 9 wins. 10 or more is really, really hard if you don't win one of these next 2 games, especially. But really, even if you do, again, when you start this poorly, you set yourself up to have to play catch up, and that's not a position you want to be in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think we expected the Ravens to have a great defense this year, but I don't think anybody thought that it would be.
The talent suggested that it should be a top 5 unit.
No, they're at least a respectable roster. And I think obviously we're feeling the ripple effects of them losing Mike McDonald, who obviously is looking awesome right now.
Might have wanted to make that switch. I'm not going to.
Yeah. And so now, Shayne, we look at this team. In the first 4 weeks, the Baltimore Ravens allowed 41 points against the Bills, 17 to the Browns, which might be the maximum they can score.
That might be the most you can allow to the Browns,
38 to the Lions and 37 to the Chiefs. And by the way, the Chiefs benched Patrick Mahomes in the fourth quarter with 37 points because they just didn't need him anymore. They had such a comfortable lead.
They're like, what do we do? Yeah.
So on the season, Shayne, the Ravens are allowing 33.3 points per game. That is dead last in the NFL, even behind the Dallas Cowboys. And then they're allowing 406 offensive yards per game, which is 31st in the NFL. This is a really bad defense. And if you don't have Lamar Jackson, what do you have going for you right now? This team is going to struggle. If they drop to 1-4 already, I mean, you're looking at a team that has 5, just based off of history, 5 or 6% chance, I think, of making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, things can change. They can get on a hot streak. The weakness overall of the AFC plays a factor into their outlook this year. What's funny, Shayne, is this team is still the odds-on favorite to win the division. I think it's a horrible bet. Don't go bet on the Ravens right now because your payout's not good, and I don't think that their chances.
You got to wait and see
good.
what the next 2 weeks look like before you make that bet.
If they can get, I mean, if they can survive the next 2 weeks, if they can come out of there 2-4, whatever. I mean, I 3-3 just feels so unrealistic with the.
I don't know if they beat the Rams if Lamar's healthy. I'll just be honest with you. That's not necessarily because I think it doesn't matter. It's just that the Rams are really good. So it's like there's no guarantee you're going to beat them anyway, even at home. So like, and plus right now with the way Stafford's playing, like Puka Nacua might have 300 yards in that game if he wants to. Like it's just not working right now. So.
Yeah, no, it's really rough. I mean, you got the Texans this week, the Rams the following week. You've got some winnable games after that, but I mean, is it too late by then? Are you already going to be too buried? Are you going to be 3.5 games behind the Steelers at that point? And then basically Pittsburgh can just, as long as you don't just blow this thing like you did last season down the stretch and just look abysmal, you'll be fine. They're in a really, really rough state right now. And I don't think anybody would have predicted this from the Ravens. The one thing I will say, Shayne, about Baltimore is they got a really tough draw early on. Getting the Bills, Lions, and Chiefs in your first 3 of your first 4 games, it doesn't get any more challenging than that.
Yeah. And
unfortunately, some of those just swung the other way. I mean, they lost the Bills game by a point. They lost the Lions game by technically 1 score, a touchdown, 2-point conversion. But I mean, if those swing the other way, we wouldn't be hitting the panic button. But now there's a lot of reason to panic about this team for sure.
I think their best hope is that the Week 18 game is for the division. Like because that's in Pittsburgh. If we have tied records, or if they would get the tiebreaker, if they win and their records would be tied, that's their best hope, in my opinion. Like I don't know if I don't think we get a wild card team out of this division. I really think the division winner probably is the one that makes the playoffs, because I think 10 wins is probably the sweet spot, right? Like whoever gets to 10 wins first might take this whole thing. So, we'll see. But again, definitely wait and see what the next 2 weeks are. If you're trying to bet on who's going to win this division, I would just go ahead and save your money until you see what this team looks like the next 2 weeks, because 1-5 start, you can't.
I agree, Shayne. I agree, but it's hard not to be optimistic about the state of the Steelers compared to their rivals right now.
Because of what's going on,
Yeah, they're sitting so much better. Their strength of schedule wasn't as hard as Baltimore's to begin with because of the added games there. Yeah. So we'll see. Can they stay on top of this lead? What do you guys think? Drop it in the chat down below. Also, be sure to leave us a like, leave us a comment down on this stream, help it get viewed. If you like what we do, remember that we do 3 live shows a week, not us in particular, but Josh Yorish goes live, post games with Mark Powell. Josh is also live on Mondays at 1:30. We go live Wednesdays at 1:30. All right, Shayne, let's talk about the Steelers bye week this week. And I want to go back in time for a second here, go back to May. And I was kind of fuming back then because I'm like, this stinks, man. This stinks so bad to get a week 5 bye, which is the earliest the NFL hands out, and saying, okay, now simple math. The Steelers now after the bye have to go 13 straight games in the regular season without a break and enter the postseason. And assuming they don't get the first round bye, which is highly unlikely, considering there's only one of those, probably going to go to Buffalo.
The Bills might be 16-1. So.
They might be. Assuming they don't get that, and I think that's a pretty safe assumption, you'll be looking at, if the Steelers make it to the wild card round, that's 14 games in a row, divisional round, 15 games in a row, championship game, 16 games in a row. Again, that's being optimistic, but what's the ultimate end game here? You want to have playoff success, 16 games in a row just to try to get into the Super Bowl, and you don't get a break at any point in that stretch. And so that's why I was so hard on the NFL after the schedule release. I just hate the early buys. I don't like them that early at all. Now, fast forward, and it's October. I actually don't mind it too much. I think that ideally I would still push it back a few weeks, but all things considered, they've been really banged up. You've been missing Joey Porter since week 1. Alex Highsmith's been out with a high ankle sprain. Derek Harmon was out early. He's getting back up to speed. You've got other guys who could come off of IR now. Corey Trice could come off of IR and add some added cornerback depth. Jalen Ramsey just suffered an injury. Calvin Austin just suffered an injury. We already talked about those on this show. They're both set to miss multiple weeks. Well, now that's one fewer game they have to miss because of where the bye week lines up. Shayne, what are your overall thoughts now with how things have transpired about the Steelers week 5 bye?
I think it's fine. I mean, ideally, you still want the bye to be a little bit later in the season just to give you a better true break. But I do think it's a pretty opportune time for them to have one with, like you said, the injuries they're dealing with and just kind of needing, I think, a break after the Dublin game, obviously, and all that goes into that, and just like having a reset. Now that they've had a good chunk of games to kind of see, okay, where are we at with certain position groups and what things do we need to do? And we'll talk about some of the things we'd like to see them do during the bye week. But it is a good time, I think, to kind of reset, getting that 3-1 record through 4 games, having a good start to the season record-wise. Now it's okay, how do we get a little bit healthier, and how do we take advantage of the fact that everyone else is imploding right now? Like, we got to take advantage of that. So,
and if it wasn't for the injuries, Shayne, I would still be upset about this bye, I think. But
yeah,
I think that at least gives it some justification to say, okay, this is a chance for us to get healthy again. Yeah. And then you hope, obviously, that the last 3 quarters of the season, you don't have the same number of injuries to the defense you had. Fortunately, their offense has been healthy. So let's hope that doesn't reverse or anything that way. But all things considered, week 5 bye doesn't look nearly as bad on as it did on paper, at least originally back in May. Shayne, let's talk about some of the biggest moves and or adjustments the Steelers need to make now that you have this time. And this is it. This is your only week to figure it out, where you get that additional time off to go back to the drawing board. What do you need to do differently? And I want to start right with the offensive line. We talked about these miscommunication problems. How do you clean that up? Because Meyer's been here for 3 years and nothing is changing. It's like, I don't think firing him in season is going to help you enough. It's just going to set you back. That's one thing they've got to, I don't have an answer to it, but that is one thing that they have to find a way to fix these communication issues on the O-line.
Yeah, and like more broadly, they need to find a way to diversify this offense more. Like they have to be able to go to more traditional like drop back passes that don't require Rodgers to get the ball out in 2 seconds, right? Because again, against really good defenses or defenses that have the capability to jump on those things and to take advantage of them, if you have to be able to counterpunch with something. Right now, they don't really have it, and it's not even just because Arthur Smith isn't necessarily the best at designing plays for the passing game. He just doesn't trust anything else, right? And I think he's unfortunately justified in saying that. Like it kind of feels like he's right, unfortunately. So they have to figure that out in general, and I think a lot of it does come down to the offensive line has to be able to at least pick up stunts and has to be able to not allow like free pressures essentially to the defense like they have. It's one thing to lose, right? If you're losing, you lose, right? It is what it is. You have to deal with that. But when you lose because you just don't do the right thing, that's just really tough in the NFL because it's hard enough to pass protect when you are doing the right thing, let alone when you're not.
Yeah, and it's like, what is the answer at this point? Do you simplify assignments? Do you
That's
say
what I was going to say, maybe, but like, we don't know how simple it is already, right? We don't.
I know. Well, the thing is, you can't really just up and change your entire scheme, and Arthur Smith's not going to be for that.
No.
But I thought even like in week 4, they seemed to do better when they were just running straight up power than when they're running wide zone stuff. And I don't know why that's the case, but
it is a simpler
get
concept in general. Obviously, it's a much more aggressive one too. Like one of the key, I think one of the easiest. A lot of defensive coordinators will say this. A lot of offensive coordinators say this. One of the easiest things to do to try to like bring the level of play up is just have guys do things that are aggressive, where they just have to go after it 100%. Power does fall in line with that, right? Like that is more of that type of run scheme. So maybe that is helpful if they want to do that. But we know he wants to be the wide zone offense. Like we know that's what they're built for. So
Shayne, another thing that I think adjustment they need to make, you got to get your receivers more involved. And I want to talk about one player in particular, Roman Wilson.
Yeah.
Are you ever going to know what the guy can do if you don't have plays designed to go his way? And what I mean by that, you go back and watch the All-22. And I've had people chirp back at me for this.
Yeah, I did. I did see that, which I was like,
You examine the game and you can clearly see where are the top reads in this play. You can tell by, if you're looking at the sky view of the all 22, you can tell by where Rodgers is looking and the route combination.
Mm-hmm.
And half the time not half the time, the vast majority of the time Roman Wilson is out there, he is a backside decoy on the play that is just running a go route down the field, never to even be in consideration to have the ball go his way. Now, either you don't trust him or you're simply just trying to get the ball into the hands of the guys you trust more, DK Metcalf or Jonnu Smith, whatever. And that's understandable. I mean, those guys are the veterans. They're the guys that Rodgers obviously wants to have chemistry with. But why draft a player in the 3rd round? Why take the 46th overall player on the consensus board? Why do those things and refuse to at least try to see what he looks like? If you just throw him a bone, like give him a few plays where he gets involved, like let him get warmed up, let him build confidence a little bit. And I think that the Steelers have had such an issue, and we've talked about it on this podcast before, Shayne, developing young talent. And I think largely either because they're not being used properly or they're refused to being used in general. And is that the case with Roman Wilson, or do you think it's something else?
I think it's the fact that this is very much a 1 to 2 receiver offense right now by design, right? And you can make an argument that's how it should be given where the talent lies on this roster. But I think more to your point, like, because I did see a lot of people were like, chirping back at you a little bit when you're talking about that, like, oh, well, if he was good enough, they'd be doing that. And it's like, that's not really the point. I think the criticism can be one of two things. It can either be that they should be getting him the ball occasionally to get his confidence up to see what he can do, or if he's really so bad that they don't think he deserves it, then why is he here? Then you failed as a coach and a GM by drafting this player who can't play. So either way, the Steelers deserve blame. It's just, is the blame because they're not using a guy who could help them, or is it because he's not good enough to help them and they wasted a 3rd round pick? Either way, the criticism is there, right? Like you can nitpick whatever you want. You can say it's this or that or whatever. Until you give him an opportunity, though, like you said, and we saw it in the preseason. It's the preseason, whatever. He has physical ability. We know this. We know he's able to catch the football well. He showed flashes of that, especially in this past preseason. He did it in Michigan at a big-time program. If he's not going to be a part of the offense at all in year 2, when you don't have receivers, he either can't play or you can't coach him, one of the two. I'd like to find out what the answer is. So until they play him more, until they give him targets, like you said, we're not going to know.
Yeah, and how do you come away from the last few weeks of training camp, from the preseason, and say, yeah, this is a guy I don't want to get involved? Like he was destroying defenders down the field, catching the ball in traffic. They made some really big plays, and yet, I mean, just absolute crickets right now for Roman Wilson. So wouldn't you rather at least see him try to get involved? And maybe he's not that guy, but at least you would know, and you would know what you have going into next season as well. So I think that a lot of times we're just left in the dark with who players are. And so that's one of the adjustments. Shayne, do you have any other adjustments you'd like to see the Steelers make before we sign off here soon?
I think if you're not going to give more targets to receivers, if you're not going to get them more involved, you have to get the ball to Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith in more effective ways. You just have to. They've combined for, I think, 136 yards this year.
Is bad,
It's again, like you can't, if this is going to be your offense, if you want to throw the ball to DK Metcalf, you want to throw the ball to the running backs, and you want to use 3 tight ends, I'm okay with that, right? Like I can live with that if that's what your offensive plan is. But if that's not what you want to do clearly, or if you can't do it effectively, then you do have to either go get a receiver to help you or get them more involved. It cannot continue to be this weird mismatch of like, well, some weeks Kevin Austin will have a good game, some weeks it'll be Jonnu Smith, some weeks it's like you have to have a cohesive plan to get the football in the hands of your playmakers, and they don't have it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at this right now just to see how incredibly ineffective they've been. Jonnu Smith has 71 yards on 16 targets. That's 4.4 yards a target. I mean, that's essentially dumping the ball to a backup running back.
It's running back numbers. You can't. I don't know.
No, you're paying too much for that. And so I think Freiermuth, just historically, get him the ball over the middle of the field on post. Yeah. Like that's where he thrives. He can catch the ball in traffic. He's tough, can usually fall forward for a few extra yards. But I agree. That's one area they need to improve. And one other adjustment, Shayne, that I think that they need to make is obviously the communication everywhere in the back half of the defense, that at the linebacker level, at the corner and safety level, because we've also seen that this cover 3 has been exposed at times. You've got that single high up there, and especially when they're in man coverage, trying to cross the field. Their corners just don't have the speed for that when you get matched up against, and there's too much open space. And so if the pass rush is not getting there fast enough, we've seen the Steelers get beat for massive plays down the field. The coverage issues and mental lapses have to get cleaned up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Teams already know what you're doing most of the time. You cannot do those things poorly if you're going to do them most of the time. And that's kind of the issue they're having right now, is they're doing both. So.
All right. We've had a long show today. What do you guys think? Other moves or adjustments the Steelers need to make during the bye week? Please leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Also, remember to give us a like, give us a follow. We go live on this show every single Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Also, check out Josh Yorish's show live at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays. And we go live post games as well with Mark and Josh. Thank you for joining us on the show today. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Still Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out on YouTube, or ask Alexa to play the Steelers Still Curtain podcast. And thanks again for listening to the Still Curtain podcast.